The aroma of burnt sugar and old resentment still clung to my memory, even after he walked out. Owen stood in the doorway of the packed rehearsal party, framed by the festive lights I'd meticulously hung. He looked at me, then at the assembled guests, and simply said, "This isn't what I wanted." The quiet click of the lock as he left echoed louder than any shout, leaving me alone in the shimmering chaos of my own making. The perfect evening shattered. It happened 4 days before the wedding. Owen left. I look back now and see it as the biggest mistake of my life. Even bigger than the years I spent chasing that Michelin star. I lost him because I was too busy orchestrating perfection, too busy controlling every single detail of a life I thought we were building together. I was the chef at a respected Chicago eatery, and that drive, that need for everything to be just right, bled into everything else. The idea for the rehearsal party, the one that ultimately started everything, had been mine entirely. Becky, my cousin and reluctant maid of honor, had offered a few timid suggestions about separate bachelor and bachelorette parties, maybe a steak dinner for Owen's guys. And we could do a spa day or something simple, she'd said, picking at a loose thread on my couch. I'd waved her off, already sketching out seating charts in my head. No separate parties at all, I'd told her, probably a little too sharply. Owen and I share all the same friends anyway. What's the point? It'll be one big, perfect celebration. A combined rehearsal party. Think of the efficiency. I didn't wait for her input, and I'll handle all the food. You know nobody can touch my catering. I remember the look on Becky's face, a slight widening of her eyes, a familiar flicker of resignation. That should have been my first warning sign. Or maybe it was Owen's quiet acquiescence to everything I wanted. He'd just nodded, a small smile playing on his lips, whenever I laid out another grand plan, another detail he hadn't asked for. How easily he gave into whatever I wanted. I'd mistaken his agreeable nature for contentment, his peace for my own will. 3 weeks leading up to the party were a blur of meticulous planning. I had the brownstone we'd just bought looking like something torn from the pages of a home decor magazine. Every surface gleamed, every light fixture glowed with the perfect wattage. I drafted a spectacular menu, moving beyond what I served at the restaurant, aiming for something intimate yet grand. Braised short ribs, a wild mushroom risotto, seared scallops with a Meyer lemon beurre blanc. The liquor order alone was enough to stock a small bar. Top-shelf bourbon, imported gin, a selection of wines I'd personally curated. My hands, usually deft with a chef's knife, were now just as precise with fabric swatches and flower arrangements. Ruth, my sous chef, observed my intensity from a safe distance in the days leading up to the party. She came over to help me organize the kitchen in the new house, a favor I'd called in. "You know this is just a party, right?" she'd asked, leaning against the polished granite counter. She watched me arrange a platter of artisanal cheeses with the same focus I'd give a 5-course tasting menu. Not a Michelin inspection. I just smiled, adjusting a sprig of rosemary. "It's important, Ruth. This is the start of everything." I paused, then lowered my voice a little. A rare moment of vulnerability. "He's different. Owen. He's the one, you know. I want everything to be perfect for him. For us." Ruth just nodded, wiping her hands on a towel. "Remember that time he tried to surprise you with dinner?" Ruth asked, a slight chuckle in her voice. "The pasta incident?" I laughed, a genuine, fond sound. "Owen, bless his heart, had once tried to make me a carbonara. The kitchen looked like a flower bomb went off, and the pasta, bless his heart, was somehow both overcooked and crunchy. But it was the thought." I shook my head. "He meant well," I said, though I heard a subtle shift in my own tone. A hint of indulgent mockery I hadn't intended. He was good at so many things, but cooking wasn't one of them. The day of the party, I was in full chef mode. My apron was tied tight, my hair pulled back, a faint sheen of sweat on my forehead from the heat of the ovens. The kitchen was humming, filled with the rich smells of roasted garlic and simmering sauces. Guests would arrive in 2 hours. I was finishing plating the appetizers, small works of art on ceramic spoons. Owen walked in then, quiet as always. He came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist, his familiar cologne, a blend of cedar and something fresh, filling my senses. He rested his chin on my shoulder, looking at the array of dishes on the counter. "This looks amazing, babe," he murmured, his voice warm against my ear. "You've outdone yourself." End quote. I leaned back into him, pleased, a momentary lightness in my chest. "Just wait until you see what I have planned for the wedding menu," I said, turning back to my work, already thinking ahead. My mind was always moving, always planning. He squeezed me gently. "I can't wait to marry you," he said, his voice quiet, sincere. I remember his words now, how they felt in that moment, and the wave of self-loathing that washes over me. If only I had listened to the quiet sincerity, instead of just the words themselves. By 9 o'clock, the brownstone was buzzing. The music, a curated playlist of jazz and indie folk, flowed through the rooms. Guests clutched their signature Midwestern mule cocktails, a blend of bourbon, ginger beer, and lime. My fourth glass of champagne was half empty, the bubbles tickling the back of my throat. I felt light, exhilarated, a little powerful. The party was a success. My success. Becky, already a bit tipsy, clinked her glass for attention. A hush fell over the living room. Okay, she slurred, giggling. "Everyone knows how amazing Clara May is, right? But do you know how she snagged our Owen?" She paused for dramatic effect, swaying slightly. "It was at that charity gala, where Clara May was doing the catering. Owen, poor guy, looked like a lost puppy in an expensive suit, totally overwhelmed by all the fancy food words." A ripple of laughter went through the crowd. Clara May, being Clara May, took pity on him. Or maybe she just wanted someone to appreciate her artisanal cheese plate. More laughter. I looked over at Owen. He was standing by the fireplace, talking to my cousin, Mark. His smile faltered for a second, a slight tightness in his eyes, a brief darkening. But I dismissed it. The champagne, the warmth of the room, the approving glances of our friends, it all made me feel invincible. Besides, Owen knew I loved him. A little teasing was harmless. It was a good story. I joined in, stepping forward, drawing the spotlight. "Oh my God. You should have seen him trying to pronounce the menu items," I exclaimed, exaggerating my surprise, my voice carrying easily over the remaining chatter. He kept saying carpaccio instead of carpaccio, like it was some kind of spell. The laughter grew louder, encouraged by my performance. Owen's smile became fixed, a mask. But I didn't see it then. I was too busy basking in the glow. He had no idea what half the things were, I continued, warming to my theme, enjoying the way the crowd leaned in. I caught him Googling ingredients under the table, trying to figure out what amuse-bouche actually meant. A wave of robust laughter swept through the room. It felt good. I felt funny. Owen tried to interject, a quiet, almost imperceptible Clara May cutting through the din, but I ignored him. The momentum was too strong. I was on a roll. It was just a story. A funny story. About how we met. And then, fueled by another sip of champagne, I launched into the pasta incident again. But this time, it wasn't the fond, indulgent recollection I'd shared with Ruth. This time, it was sharp, edged with a casual cruelty that made my own stomach twist a little even as I spoke it. "And then there was the time he tried to surprise me with dinner," I announced, pitching my voice to be heard by everyone. "A romantic carbonara, can you believe it?" I laughed, but it wasn't a kind sound. "I mean, this is a man who graduated top of his class at Northwestern Law, mind you, arguing complex cases in court, but he couldn't figure out how to use a pasta roller." My voice rose, cutting through the music. The room went quiet. The laughter died down, replaced by a few uncomfortable chuckles, quickly stifled. The air in the brownstone, which had felt so warm and inviting moments before, now felt thin, almost brittle. Owen was still standing by the window, his back mostly to the room. I could see his knuckles now, white where he gripped his glass, pressing against the cut crystal. He hadn't turned around, oblivious, or perhaps just too far gone in my own performance to care. I pushed further, aiming for the punchline. But the best part, I said, drawing it out, relishing the anticipation. The best part was when I found him trying to unstick the pasta from the ceiling fan. The laughter, what little there was, died in my throat. Owen's hand, still gripping the crystal, lowered slowly. He didn't turn to face me immediately. Instead, he placed the glass gently, deliberately, onto the windowsill. The sound it made as it met the polished wood was not a clink, but a tiny, sharp crack, like a hairline fracture appearing in a pane of glass. It cut through the silent room like a gunshot. Then he turned. His eyes, usually warm and reassuring, were cold, flat, dangerously quiet. "Is this funny to you, Clara May?" His voice was low, barely above a whisper, yet it pierced through the last vestiges of my inebriated haze. It felt like a blade. I blinked, finally seeing him, really seeing the tension that had gathered in his shoulders, the rigid set of his jaw. The realization hit me like a cold splash. "Owen," I started, trying to sound reasonable, conciliatory. "I'm just telling a story. It's a funny story." My voice, even to my own ears, sounded thin, unconvincing. "No," he said, taking a step forward, his voice rising now, losing its quiet menace and gaining an edge of raw hurt. "No, you're not just telling a story. You're humiliating me. Again. In front of all our friends." He gestured vaguely at the hushed faces around the room, the ones that were now avoiding our gaze. A frantic denial rose in my throat. "That's not true." But even as the words left my mouth, a cold, hard realization settled in my gut. It was true. The knowledge landed with a sickening thump. I hadn't meant it to be, not really, but it had become exactly that. I'd seen his face tighten earlier. I'd felt the shift in the room. I'd ignored it all. Owen swept his gaze across the room, his eyes challenging. "Anyone want to back her up on that?" His voice was calm, almost conversational, but it held a furious undercurrent. "Anyone want to tell me I'm being too sensitive?" The silence that followed was deafening. It stretched, thick and uncomfortable, filling every corner of my meticulously decorated brownstone. Friends averted their gazes, some looking at their shoes, others pretending to be deeply interested in the abstract art on the walls. Becky, my cousin, who had started it all, slowly lowered her gaze, her face flushed with a mixture of embarrassment and complicity. No one spoke. No one met his eyes. Owen's gaze returned to me, locking on mine. His voice, though still calm, was laced with an undeniable bitterness. "This is what you do, Clara May. Every time we're with people, you find some way to make me look stupid. To make yourself look better, funnier, smarter, at my expense." He paused, letting his words hang in the air, undeniable. "I can't do this anymore." He shook his head slowly, a deep, weary sigh escaping him. "I need space." He turned on his heel, not bothering to retrieve his coat. Not looking back, he walked out of the living room, through the silent hall, and out the front door, leaving behind a stunned silence, a room full of awkward guests, and a woman who suddenly felt very, very cold. The confrontation had sobered me completely. The champagne buzz evaporated, replaced by a sharp pang of genuine regret and a rising wave of panic. My perfect party, my perfect life, was cracking. I took a shaky step, then another, moving towards the door. "Owen," I called out, my voice thin and desperate. I pushed past a knot of frozen guests, pulling the heavy oak door open. He was already in his car, the engine turning over. I saw his profile as he backed out of the driveway, gravel crunching loudly under the tires. Then, with a sudden surge of acceleration, his car peeled out onto the street, the red taillights disappearing quickly into the Chicago night. He was gone. The rest of the night was a blur. I moved through the crowded rooms like a ghost, offering mumbled excuses to our bewildered guests. He had a rough week at work, I'd stammer to Sarah from Owen's firm. "A big case, you know." To my aunt, I'd say, "Owen just needed some air." Too many people, too much noise. The explanations felt hollow even as I delivered them, flimsy fabrications against the stark reality of his sudden departure. The party, my grand creation, limped to an awkward close around midnight. People left quickly, their polite goodbyes laced with a palpable sense of unease. Becky stayed behind, stacking used glasses, her face creased with concern. "He'll cool off, Clara May," she said, her voice soft, trying to be comforting. "Owen's not one for drama, he just needs a minute. He'll be back." Her words were a balm, but they didn't penetrate the cold dread settling in my chest. I called him. Once, twice, then a dozen times. My texts went unanswered, swallowed by the digital void. "Owen, please call me. I'm so sorry. Where are you?" Nothing. The next day, the panic set in. Days bled into each other, each one a fresh wave of disbelief and growing terror. The wedding was 4 days away. I started calling around, desperate. His office first. "He hasn't come in today, Miss Evans," his assistant said, her voice neutral. His parents, "No, Clara May. We haven't heard from him," his mother said, a brittle edge to her voice, a silent accusation. My calls to his closest friends, to anyone who might offer a clue, yielded the same chilling response. No one had seen Owen since the party. It was as if he had simply vanished into the Chicago night. The wedding gifts, wrapped in shiny paper and tied with elegant bows, piled up in the corner of the living room, a cruel, mocking reminder of the rapidly approaching ceremony. Each box felt heavier than the last, a testament to the future that was now slipping through my fingers like fine sand. The perfectly arranged brownstone, once a symbol of our shared life, now felt like a mausoleum. I descended into a spiral of self-recrimination and despair. My impeccably organized life unraveled. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. My mind, replaying every interaction, every word, every subtle shift in Owen's expression. "I'm the villain in it," I wrote in the quiet hours of the night, scrawling it on a cocktail napkin. The words burning with a bitter truth. The perfect party, the perfect menu, the perfect me. It had all been a performance, and Owen had simply walked off stage. I revisited my past behavior with brutal honesty, stripping away my self-justifications. Owen's quiet compliance, his easygoing nature. It wasn't love, not entirely. It was a pattern of my dominance, a slow erosion of his own will, his own desires, replaced by my relentless need for control. I had orchestrated his life, our life, down to the last detail, and he had let me, until he couldn't anymore. The pasta incident became a symbol, not of his endearing clumsiness, but of my callous disregard for his efforts. Ruth called, her voice concerned, cutting through my fog. "Clara May, you sound awful. Everything okay?" I tried to explain, the words catching in my throat, tangled with shame and fear. "Owen, he left." I managed, the confession feeling hollow, insufficient. Her silence on the other end of the line spoke volumes. "He just left? From the party. He hasn't come back. He's not answering anything." My voice cracked. Ruth offered to come over, to help, but I mumbled an excuse. I needed to be alone with my unraveling. A deeper suspicion began to form, a cold, hard knot in my gut. Owen's silence wasn't just anger. It was too absolute, too complete. There was no trace, no breadcrumb. This wasn't a man who just needed to cool off. This was a man who had made a decision. A gut-wrenching dread began to form, a realization that chipped away at my remaining composure. What if this wasn't just about the party? What if this was about everything? 4 days before the wedding. 4 days since Owen walked out, leaving me in the shattered remains of my perfect party. 4 days of unanswered calls, texts, and a gnawing silence that was driving me to a breaking point. My carefully constructed life was unraveling, thread by painful thread. The elaborate plans, the meticulously curated details, they felt like cruel jokes now. My hands, usually steady and precise, trembled constantly. Sleep was a distant memory. Then, an email arrived. Not from Owen, but from his law firm. A curt, professional message addressed to me. Please be advised that Mr. Owen Evans has taken an indefinite leave of absence, effective immediately. All inquiries regarding his cases should be directed to his colleague, Miss Henderson. No explanation, no forwarding address, just a cold, impersonal confirmation of his disappearance. It felt like another punch, one I hadn't seen coming. In a fit of desperation, I started searching the house, not for Owen, but for any sign of him, any clue. I went through his dresser drawers, something I rarely did, respecting his privacy. Under a pile of neatly folded t-shirts, tucked into a corner, I found it. A small, creamy white note, folded in half, almost hidden. It wasn't meant for me. My fingers fumbled as I opened it. The handwriting was delicate, unfamiliar. Owen, it read, thank you for last night. That moment was special. Keep our secret safe. B. The world tilted. A cold, suffocating dread gripped me. Colder than any professional email. More profound than any silence. Keep our secret safe. B. My mind raced, replaying every interaction, every fleeting glance, every casual conversation. Becky. Owen's co-worker, Barbara. A quiet woman with sharp eyes I'd met at a firm Christmas party. Bianca. A client whose name I only vaguely remembered. Any B was a suspect now, an invisible assailant. I called Becky, my voice tight with a desperation I barely recognized. Have you heard from Owen? I demanded, skipping any pleasantries. Anything? Becky's voice was hesitant. No, Clara May. I told you, he hasn't called me. Are you sure? I pressed, my grip tightening on the phone. Think. Did you see him with anyone at the party? Anyone he seemed close with? I could almost hear her shifting uncomfortably on the other end. A long pause then. Well, he was talking with Barbara, from his office. Over by the drinks table. For a while. Pretty private, actually. I just thought, you know, work stuff. Her voice was barely a whisper. Barbara. Of course. The seed of doubt, once planted, now bloomed into a thorny, poisonous weed. I remembered Barbara smart, understated, a quiet intensity in her eyes. I had dismissed her as just a colleague, another face in the blur of Owen's professional life. My own pride, my own focus, had blinded me. I tried to dismiss it, to wave it away like a pesky fly. Barbara? Don't be ridiculous, Becky. It was a work event. They're colleagues. Nothing more. But the words tasted like ash. The image of Owen talking to Barbara, the note, the absolute silence, it all clicked into a terrifying, coherent picture. This wasn't just about my mistakes. This was about his, or theirs. The house, once a sanctuary, now felt suffocating. I couldn't sit still. I had to know. Despite the email, despite his leave, I decided to go to Owen's office building. Even if he wasn't there, maybe Barbara would be. Maybe she would know something. Or, more likely, maybe I would find her, and she would be the B in the note. And then I would truly know what life's costly choices unfold. The polished glass doors of Owen's downtown law firm reflected the gray Chicago sky. I waited, bundled in my coat, for almost an hour, pretending to check my phone. Really just watching. I was hoping to catch someone, anyone, who might know something. The cold wind bit at my ears, but I barely felt it. My own internal chill was far more pervasive. Then I saw her. Barbara. She emerged from the revolving doors, her shoulders hunched, a large tote bag slung over one arm. Her face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed, looking visibly distressed. She clearly hadn't been expecting me. My heart hammered against my ribs, a painful drumbeat. I stepped directly into her path. Barbara, I said, my voice hoarse. She flinched, startled, her eyes wide with a mixture of surprise and guilt. There was no mistaking it. Clara May, she stammered, trying to compose herself. What are you doing here? Owen's gone, I stated, cutting to the chase, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. He's not at home. He's not at work. He's not answering anything. I pushed the folded note into her hand. Did you write this? Barbara glanced at the note, her face draining of color. She tried to hand it back, her fingers trembling. I don't know what you're talking about. Her eyes darted around, looking for an escape, but I wasn't letting her go. My desperation, raw and undisguised, must have broken through her defenses. Don't lie to me, Barbara, I said, my voice rising, an edge of hysteria creeping in. Just tell me. Is it you? Are you B? Her shoulders sagged. A single tear traced a path down her cheek, catching the weak afternoon light. Yes, she whispered, her voice barely audible. It's me. The word hit me like a physical blow. A sharp, searing pain tore through my chest. My vision blurred for a moment. Then, the dam broke. Barbara, no longer able to hold it in, started talking, the words tumbling out in a rush, punctuated by sobs. We've been seeing each other for months, Clara May. Since late summer. She wrung her hands. Owen was so unhappy. He said he felt like he was suffocating. You always had to be in charge. Everything had to be your way. He felt like you never really saw him. Just what you wanted him to be. Her words twisted, the knife already plunged into my gut. He said you always belittled him, especially when he tried to connect with your world. Like the cooking. He just wanted to impress you. And you made fun of him, to everyone. Barbara swallowed hard, her gaze fixed on her shoes. He was planning to end things with you. After the wedding. He didn't want to hurt you. Not publicly, but the party. That night, it just pushed him over the edge. He said he couldn't pretend anymore. The truth, bitter and absolute, washed over me. My perfect life, my perfect love, my perfect self, all a lie. My own behavior, once a source of pride, now appeared in a horrifying new light. My drive, my control, my sharp wit. They hadn't been strengths. They had been weapons. Slowly, meticulously dismantling the man I claimed to love. The mockery, the dismissiveness, the constant need to be superior, it had chipped away at him, leaving him vulnerable to someone else's quiet attention. Barbara, overwhelmed by her confession, mumbled something about needing to go, and hurried away, leaving me standing alone on the busy Chicago street. The cold wind no longer mattered. I felt hollowed out, empty. The grand brownstone, the Michelin star, the spectacular menu, all of it felt meaningless. My perfect life wasn't crumbling, it had already fallen. I walked back into the brownstone, the silence louder than any argument. The house, which had been a stage for my grand designs, now felt cavernous, cold. The wedding gifts, still wrapped in their festive paper, piled up in the corner, accusing me with their innocent presence. Each bow, each tag, a silent condemnation of the future I had destroyed. I sat on the edge of the couch, staring at my phone. My fingers hovered over Owen's name. There was nothing left to lose. I typed, slowly, deliberately. Owen, please. I'm so sorry. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. Just please. Let me explain. Let's talk. One last time. I pressed send, a desperate prayer sent into the ether. The reply came almost immediately. A cold, hard finality. It's over, Clara May. It has been for a long time. The party just made it clear. No anger, no rage, just a quiet, unyielding resolution. It was more devastating than any shout. The man I was supposed to marry, the man I loved, was gone. Irrevocably. The next few days were a blur of practical, painful tasks. The wedding was officially called off. I had to make the calls, my voice thin and reedy. To the caterer, the florist, the musicians, each conversation felt like twisting a knife in my own gut. The venue, booked months in advance, now just an empty date on a calendar. The gifts, I spent an entire afternoon meticulously unwrapping each one, logging them, then repackaging them for return. Each item, a symbol of a dream unwound. The crystal decanter, the silver picture frame, the espresso maker, they all whispered of a life that would never be. Word spread through the close-knit Chicago restaurant community like wildfire. My name, once synonymous with precision and success, was now tinged with whispers of betrayal, of a fiancé who simply vanished. My reputation, that carefully cultivated edifice, took a hit. But I kept working. The kitchen, once my sanctuary of control, became my refuge. The rhythmic chop of vegetables, the searing heat of the pans, the organized chaos of a busy service, it was the only place I felt any semblance of purpose, any escape from the ceaseless churn of regret. In the quiet solitude of my brownstone, I began to confront it all. My own ego, my relentless need for control, the casual way I had undermined Owen, slowly eroding his spirit. It wasn't just Barbara, not just the affair. That was the symptom, not the disease. The disease was me. My moral consequences weren't just about his betrayal, but about my own profound contribution to the demise of our relationship. I had pushed him, relentlessly, until he broke. I am alone now, surrounded by the remnants of a life that was supposed to be perfect, a masterpiece of my own making. The walls still gleam, the furniture still sits precisely as I arranged it, but the house is hollow. The heavy weight of regret sits in my chest, a constant, dull ache. I am no longer the celebrated chef, the brilliant planner, the villain even. I am just a woman facing the harsh realities of her choices in the quiet, unforgiving landscape of the Midwest. There is no triumphant return, no easy redemption, just the daunting journey of rebuilding a life from the ground up, brick by painful brick. But there is a flicker now, a grim determination, to learn from my mistakes, to understand what it means to truly pay the price. And in that, perhaps, there is a different kind of hope. The quiet of the brownstone settled around me, thick and heavy. A constant reminder of Owen's absence. The wedding gifts, still boxed, still stacked in the corner, served as monuments to a future that would never arrive. It was easy, in the silence, to replay every sharp word, every dismissive gesture. Every time I'd chosen my own perceived brilliance over his quiet dignity, there was no grand redemption, no sudden forgiveness, just the cold, factual truth of a life I'd dismantled with my own hands. The restaurant, my once unshakable kingdom, felt different now. The chatter of the staff, the clang of pots, the precise choreography of service, it all continued. But the edge I once had, the drive for external validation, had dulled. I still cooked, I still led, but the flavor of ambition had changed. It was no longer about proving myself to the world, but simply getting through each day. The Midwestern landscape, once a backdrop to my grand plans, now mirrored my internal state. Vast, quiet, and demanding an honest reckoning. There was only the long, hard road ahead, paved with regret, and the slow, arduous work of finding out who I was, stripped of the perfection I had so desperately sought. I knew I had to truly pay the price, and the payment would be a lifetime of quiet understanding.